It's a very good morning and thank you for joining us. We are broadcasting live from our Zettian studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. My name is Munasha Mkahlera and welcome to our series on Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust discussion Beyond Constitutional Amendment 2 Act, and episode 3's topic is Lessons Learned from the Women's Quota System. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimpapers Television Network and our partners, Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust, Yett. Now, the Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust is a youth networking organization committed to the full participation of young people in sustainable development through advocacy and capacity building of youth and youth organizations in Zimbabwe. Now, remember, if you have any comments or views on our show today, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zimpapers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. Now, just to get an understanding, the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment Act 2 sailed through both the National Assembly and Senate with overwhelming votes. It was signed by the President and published as an act. It is now the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment Number 2 Act 2021, Act Number 2 of 2021. Now, the Constitution Amendment Number 2 Act of 2021 extends the special edition of extra women members of Parliament by 2 more terms and also reserves 10 proportional seats in the National Assembly for young people aged 21 to 35. So today's discussion will explore these 2 aspects of Amendment Number 2 and their broader implications on youth participation and governance processes in Zimbabwe. Our main focus today, however, is on the women's quota system. What can we learn from the current women's quota system? What should we adopt and what should we abandon? Now, to help us unpack this topic, we have an esteemed panel comprising of Honorable Tatenda Mavetera from ZANU-PF, Isabel Monzora Simango from MDCT, the National Secretary for Gender, and Patience Chido Mutakaya, Training and Outreach Officer for Women's Academy for Leadership and Political Excellence, WALPI. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies.
Thank you.
Now, of course, last week we had you, Isabel, Tatenda, so it would be interesting to, continue the conversation going. But to kickstart today's topic, I'll start with you, Patience. What is the women's quota system? Let's start there. What is it?
Okay, the women's quota system was put in place with the Constitution in 2013, that is on Section 124B, that gives women 60 seats. So the 60 seats are on top of the 210 seats that we already have in the House of Assembly.
Okay. And what are the different types of quota systems that, the different types of systems we have in place? Do we have 1? Do we have 2? What's the system?
Currently, we have the proportional representation women's quota system that came in 2013, like I've indicated. And according to the amendment number 2, we are now going to have another quota that is 30% for women in the local government. And we are also going to have 10 more seats for women, for youths in Zimbabwe, not women only, but it's going to be 5 women and 5 men for the quota for youths.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Tatenda, given what we now understand as the women's quota system, how is the current existing system working in Zimbabwe? How is it functioning?
Okay, thank you very much. How this whole system is working is, I know you're quite specific that you really want to be talking about the women's quota system, but I thought it's also important for us to realize that quotas are actually a provision which is set aside just to make sure that at least we satisfy certain injustices, especially in the whole system. And if you look at it, I've also realized that if you look at quotas, we actually have economic quotas, we also have got even education quotas. I'll tell you, even if you go to University of Zimbabwe, now you realize that they've got a quota, a provision that they have to make sure that at least even when it comes to even difficult, or not difficult as per se degrees, but some degrees that are usually male dominated, they make sure that they've got that provision which they set aside for making sure that the young women will actually be able to get it. So for me, I feel that these women's quotas, what they then are supposed to do is that they're just supposed to be there to make sure that at least whatever injustices are there, actually there is supposed to be addressed. Here in Zimbabwe, we have got this women's quota system, but it's not only that only system that we have. We also have got the chiefs quota system, whereby we have got 18 chiefs that are supposed to be getting in and also into parliament. But it's only not supposed to be political quota systems that we need to be looking at. Even right now we have got within the Procurement Act, we have got 30% a quota that is supposed to be going to women. Whether they uptake it or not, that is another question. But the issue is that we have got a 30% quota, which actually is now economic. So I think we need to be more broader on looking at these quota systems. But however, since you're mainly focusing on the political one, which is the women's quota system, what happens is that political parties, it is allocated on a pro rata basis. After we have voted, after we have finished and concluded on voting, we then find out what percentage each of the political parties involved would have amassed. And the ones that would have submitted party list will actually be able to be awarded looking at the percentage that they would have got, especially on the overall voting proportion that we would have got as a country. So if you look at it, let's say in Mashonaland East, we would have got maybe ZANU-PF has got 60%, and then MDC has got let's say 40%. What then happens is that of the 6 seats, let's say in the proportional representative especially of the National Assembly, you then realize that 60% will go to ZANU-PF and 40% of the 6 seats will also go to MDC. So this is how it works here in Zimbabwe.
So, generally speaking, like you have mentioned, that it's not just one particular type of quota system, and we're looking at satisfying the injustices. To what extent can you say these quota systems serve to address these injustices?
I think they actually satisfy these injustices to a greater extent. Because if you look at it, you would come to realize, I will tell you, in this parliament that we're having now, we only had 25 constituency MPs. But then we then had an additional 60, especially in the National Assembly. So what it then does is that it increases the chances and opportunities that women are supposed to be getting into parliament. So when we get women getting to parliament, for us it's a plus on our side, because this is what we need. We need more voices. We need us to make sure, because at the end of the day, we need to understand that optics matter. The moment that young people are going to be seeing a young person being there, they'll actually appreciate it better, and they'll actually be able to live within it. The moment that they see Tatenda being there, speaking what they believe, or speaking, they'll actually be saying, okay, this is what we emulate, this is what we think we can then be empowered, so that at least we can go forward, going forward as a nation.
Thank you very much. Now, my next question is directed to you, Isabel. Can you explain how women are chosen in this quota system? Are they selected? Are they elected? How is the current system functioning at the moment?
Okay, I'll say it from my political party, because I can't speak authoritatively on what's happening in other political parties. In my political party, the elections, women are asked to bring their CVs if they're interested in occupying these positions. Then the Elections Directorate will sit together with the Women's Assembly leadership. Then they'll come up with the list. But sometimes that does not really happen, because the Elections Directorate, because of the the circumstances in our political parties, is male dominated. Okay. So you end up having many men coming up with the list for the women's quota. And that's something which we have to really look at and interrogate extensively as political parties, so that when we are looking at these lists, have the Women's Assembly coming up with their list for their own people, instead of having men or a lot of men making these decisions for them. So usually it's selection, and it's selection or appointment rather, but we rarely have primary elections for the women's quota.
Okay, bouncing it back to you, Tatenda, when we're looking at the selection process, she has explained it from her political party's point of view. What's your point of view? And in your previous response, you were mentioning the aspect of chances and opportunities. How does this tally with what we want for the women as well?
Okay, from my political party, where I come from, that is ZANU-PF, we actually are elected into these positions. Okay. I'll tell you that we need to go through the whole process. It's not by appointment. But then what then ends up happening is after you are then elected into that position, there is also the issue of ranking that then comes into play, whereby people are ranked because of their political experience. And also this is also done to make sure that at least we also include young people into the whole system. I'll tell you that within the system that we do within our party, we make sure that at least if there is one older woman, there is also a young person also coming into play. This is how it also gave birth to me also coming into parliament, because there was that provision to make sure that at least within our political party, at least there has to be at least one young person, one person who has to be below the age of 35 to be on the proportional representative list. That's in the National Assembly. But then of course in the when we're going to the senatorial proportional representative, that one was a bit different. That one was to do with zebra, whereby we're saying we had one woman, the woman is on top, and then the men on top. This is actually observed from my political party. We actually make sure that this is observed, and also this is in line with our constitution, especially on the zebra. And also even right now, I'm very sure and I'm very positive that within us as a party, this is actually going to be adhered to.
Thank you very much. Patience, from what Isabel and Tenda have highlighted, how is this selection process, effective from your view, especially as WALPI, when you're looking at what the political parties are doing? Obviously, you're not affiliated to any. So how has this been affecting or impacting the lives of women?
From my view, I think that the system of how these women are selected into positions of power, looking at how our political parties are polarized and how the political system is male dominated, I feel like the whole system gives more power to men to really select who then comes onto the list and who is finally selected as a member. So I just feel like the whole system does not give justice or leaves a room for an equal selection of others who will not benefit. I also feel that the whole process then leaves out other women who are social entrepreneurs, who are professionals, who are not affiliated to any political party. They are then left out in the whole selection process, because for a young woman or a woman to be part of these quotas, then she has to be affiliated to a certain political party. So from our understanding, from my understanding, I feel like the whole process then limits other women or select other women and leave out other women, then leading to an equal representation or leaving room for criticism, or leaving out women who are also able to occupy these leadership positions.
Okay, thank you very much. You did mention something very interesting about non-political party affiliations, but I would like to tackle it further. I just want to ask you again, Tenda, in terms of an equal selection. Patience has raised the point about men tending to, take charge, and Isabel highlighted the same as well. Have you experienced that in any form? Are we still in that era when we are saying we're trying to make decisions for women, but not as many women are making these decisions for them? We have more men in this position. What's your take?
Okay, I think we need to also understand on how parties are structured. We have got different wings. From my political party where I come from, we have got the main wing, we have got the Women's League, and also we've got the Youth League. So for us, even within our constitution, the Women's League has to do its own things, and also the Youth League also has to do the same. So what we also need to then appreciate is that when we're talking about the women's quota, there is no way men have to be involved in that whole process. This is a process which is done within us as women, and I believe that this also gave birth to me. I was selected from also the Women's League, as much as I'm from the Youth League, but the Women's League also had to be seconded. I had to be seconded to the Women's League from the Youth League. So that alone is something that I think we also need to appreciate, that from where I come from, I haven't really seen that happening. But of course, one thing that we also need to understand is we are in a patriarchal society, which I think we need to appreciate. And because of that, the only reason for us to be able to to occupy these certain positions is for us to stand firm as women, to say these are women's issues, let us not get involved, men do not have to get involved. As much as it can be, let us be united, because the issue that we're having is that as women, we're not there to support each other. By the moment that we are there to support each other and stand firm, I'm sure we can actually do better, because we'll go out there and say this we can't accept. We are saying as women, this is a women's thing, let it be a women's thing.
Thank you. So, Patience, how do you propose that after we have, identified that we are trying to advance by saying women should make the decisions for women, we don't want it to be, based on the other gender, making the decisions for us. How do we then infiltrate, be it political parties or within the independent ones? How then do we drive that message home?
Okay, I feel like for us to really have women who represent themselves, I think we really have to implement our constitutional provisions that are there in the Constitution, Section 17, Section 56, and Section 80, that explicitly states how women have to be involved in leadership positions. And I also feel that there is a need for us to then go back to the drawing board, look at our policies, align our policies with the Constitution. Let's say to even amend the Electoral Act, to even put amendments that then speak to how women are going to be selected to be in these quotas, right? To make sure that a certain percentage is set aside. Let's say if we are talking about the National Assembly, how then young women are going to be selected into the process. Then we need to have a sort of an amendment of the Electoral Act that gives reserves seats. Let's say if we are saying 60 women are going to be on top of the 210 that we already have, then what is the law or regulation that is going to make sure that at least 30% out of the 60 are going to be selected as well? So if we then leave the whole thing to be done by political parties, out the whole thing is being selected by political parties, then we have a different political parties coming up with different initiatives on how women are going to be elected. Like what my honorable has said, they have their own system. And what Isabel also indicated, they have their own system. Then these two systems are not the same, meaning the women that are going to be into the quota system from this party may be few, or there will be more in the other party. So what I would suggest that then we should have an amendment or an act that specifically speaks to the number of women, young women that are going to take up the positions, not leaving it in the hands of the political parties to decide what they have to do on their own.
Okay. Isabel, looking at the women's quota system, does proportional representation work in advancing the rights of women at policy level in Zimbabwe?
Okay, before I get to that question, I just wanted to add to what Patience, right, has just said. We have a lot of legal provisions which are pushing for gender equality and equal representation, but it goes back to the political will of the political parties. Are they serious about implementing these provisions? Because if I've noticed that within political parties, if there are no penalties for certain conduct, then everyone engaged over free for all.
Okay.
So anyone can just do whatever they want because there are no penalties. If there was a system, Yekuti, if a political party is going to go with a list to the nomination court which satisfies the provisions of gender equality in a 50-50 representation, and whoever has a list which does not satisfy this risks being disqualified, would see more women being represented, would see more women going to the nomination court. But we do not have that. We only have those provisions in the Constitution without any supporting legislation, which then gives, flesh to those provisions. So, and your question was?
I was asking you how the women's quota system, looking at the proportional representation, does it work in advancing women's rights at policy level in Zimbabwe?
I think it does in terms of increasing the numbers. I was looking at the statistics. In 2008, we had less than 10% of women in parliament. But in 2018, we have about 31.7 or 8%. That's an increase in terms of numbers. But the issue is when you are given that opportunity, Kunzi, women are now being catered for by the quota system. It means in the political parties, there is no longer that enough room for women to maneuver and be able to then contest in constituency seats, because they will simply be told, "Good, but we gave you you have a quota system. Go and battle it out, Ikoko." My party at least has some. They are not enough though. They have some constituencies which are reserved for women. We are pushing for those constituencies, Kutawande, but they are not enough. Then we also have these quota systems. But when you then look at the quota systems again, I think having them as just legal provisions is simply not enough. We need practical measures. I was looking at amendment number 2, and I looked at the quota system where they are saying we should have young women being there on the list, yet the 60 seats. Okay. Yes, but then it's not specific to how is this supposed to be done. Why did they not at least have a zebra system? Have an older woman, then next pointer a younger woman, then an older woman, then a younger woman, so that we have those specifics. Because right now, you simply have the younger women, Vachiswapa number 5 or 6 on the list, whilst the party knows during this election, probably will get number 1 to 4 in the parliament.
Okay, so then how do we say parties should address this? Because we are highlighting that this is the problem, but how then do we say, okay, we want to address it in such a way? I mean, obviously, like Tatinda said, we are still in the patriarchal system and we have a lot of differences, a lot of views, but then how do we tackle it head on?
Leaving it to the political parties to tackle it will not give us much results.
Okay.
That's why I'm going back to the issue of having specific legal provisions which look at how these quota systems are then implemented. Because just leaving it to the political parties, I have never seen a political party in their manifesto which did not mention my issues of gender equality. But when you look at how they then conduct themselves, it's a far cry from what they would have said. So have specific provisions, have an amendment of the Electoral Act, like what Patient said, and just maybe we might get it. I'm not a major proponent of quota systems. I would have preferred for the quota system, the 60 seats to be discontinued in 2023, because I noticed that even the way they are working leaves so much to be desired. They have no specific responsibilities. They have no access to CDF. They are referred to my MPs Bakosi by some unscrupulous elements, even within Parliament itself. So I was thinking, instead of continuing this quota system, it was much better to just go for 50-50. Have women getting their 105 seats specifically reserved for women and 105 seats specifically for men. That would have been the best, the very best way to go, instead of relying on quota systems.
All right. So based on what Isabel has just highlighted, Tatenda, obviously this is a system that has been in place for the past couple of years, and looking at how it has managed to, she did mention we are seeing an increase in the numbers. So we have more women representation, but what are some of the notable examples that we can say, okay, some people might not be for the quota system, but we could say we have achieved A, B, and C. What are some of the notable examples that we can say we have achieved from this quota system?
Okay, what we have achieved from this quota system is that now we are getting women also getting involved in key decision-making positions. I will tell you that right now we have got 5 ministers of state. that are actually, most of them are under the PR system. So that alone, it shows if it weren't that they were actually in the women's quota, we would not have got that provision, would not have managed to get them there. And even if you look at even the chairpersons of portfolio committees, we have got Honorable Chukukwa. She's actually from ZANU-PF. She's actually from the PR. We also have got Honorable Nguve. She's actually from the PR. She's a chairperson. And then we also have Honorable Msarurwa. She's from the PR as well. She's actually from MDC. I think that is alone for us to see that at least we are seeing, especially when we talk about, especially in Parliament, we are saying that at least even all the key decision-making positions, we are seeing young women being there. Even for myself, I'm actually an assistant speaker in Parliament. I would not have been able to achieve that if it weren't that at least I would have got that opportunity for me to be on the PR list. So for me, I think we need to look at it more holistically and look at it and say, what is it that is happening? When we are there in Parliament, then we can now be able to argue and also be able to speak because of women's issues. We have had the issue of sanitary wear. Honorable Misaya Rambui has been so much a proponent of speaking of sanitary wear. She's from PR. But right now we understand that already she's managed to make sure that she makes the noise enough for us at least that we address the issue to do with the sanitary wear. We also have got issues that we've also talked about, the issues to do with pregnant women. We have managed to achieve that, whereby we went on and we argued that there is need for us to make sure that at least people do not pay when they're pregnant. And also we went on a step forward again and also talked of issues that we're saying that at least as women we need to be having certain provisions that at least even to do with borehole drilling is something that we're actually talking about. I'll tell you, I for one, I went on and I argued very much about even this PR system that we're having now, whereby we're saying I think there is need for us to be having at least 10 seats. We argued with Honorable Misaya Rambui. We argued and we said we needed 10 seats that were supposed to be there. She's the one who moved and I seconded her to say we need 10 seats at least on the PR to be allocated for it to become law that at least as women we get 10 seats from the 60 seats that will actually be allocated to young women which is below the age of 35. So for me, when I look at all that, we have managed to achieve that because we as PR MPs were in that Parliament. And also we need to understand that numbers are very, very important. When it comes to power dynamics, when it comes to politics, numbers are very, very important. So the moment that we have young women coming into play and also we get women also being there, what it then means is even when it comes to voting, we have got women out there who are actually going to stand for women's issues. And I think this is very, very important for us going forward. The moment that we are there and then we don't have women speaking for us, I believe that there is nothing for us which is we are not involved in. So I think that that is one thing that we need to also understand, that we have managed to achieve all this because there were women in Parliament. We from 25 women which had constituencies, we now go to 85 women which were in Parliament. And I think Isabel said it, that translated to 30%, more than 30% of the total number of people in Parliament. So for me, I think that is something that I think we need also to applaud. And however, I think also we need to also understand that whatever provisions that are there, what they do is that we're looking at us being able to achieve Section 17 of the Constitution, which talks of gender equality. The moment that we're able to do that, we can only be able to do that when we've got the voice. Without the voice, we can't do anything as women. So the voice is needed, and the numbers are very, very important going forward.
Okay, just to go back to what Isabel also mentioned, she did highlight the issue about, you know, when women are in Parliament, especially because of the quota system, we're looking at them being called names, and she mentioned things like Bakosi and people not taking you seriously. As a member of Parliament, how have you experienced any of these things, and have you seen it happening to other women in Parliament?
Okay, one thing you should understand is no matter what people say about you, they might say it, but that cannot change you. As much as you can be said you are white, you can never be white. You'll still remain black. So if you need to get into politics, you need to have a thick skin. Okay. You need to say to yourself, okay, this is what people have said, but that is not what is supposed to be happening. I'll tell you, they can call people Bakosi, but I am not a Bakosi. And they can also say maybe MPs, they don't do that. That's what they will say. But at the end of the day, you need to demystify that by being active. You need to demystify that by making sure that at least you are seen there, you are actually making that voice be seen. Because the moment that we sit down and then we just say just because they've said that, and then we allow it to happen, it won't bring any change for us. As women right now, we need to understand that our greatest fight is for us to fight patriarchy. And this is where we need to get it. We need to make sure that at least we are united as women, so that at least we fight that. Because I will tell you that the only reason or the only way that they can be able to make sure that at least they put down or they make you lose confidence is by calling your names. So for me, I feel that they can say that, but I will not be able to do that. When it comes to speaking in Parliament, I need to be speaking eloquently. I need to be out there and be confident enough so that at least I can be seen there, and then we can prove that we're able to do it.
Okay. Patience, looking at what the ladies have been saying, you know, in terms of proportional representation in Parliament and the challenges that women might have to face developing thick skin. As well, P, I understand you do training on leadership and political excellence, and maybe just weigh in on how your organization does these outreaches, because obviously there are young women that are looking into getting into politics, but then some may be shy or scared to say, okay, if I go in, what are they going to say? Probably they're going to judge me. So how then are you tackling this as an organization?
Okay, thank you so much. As WAOPE, we are working with women from different backgrounds, women from different political parties. On our trainings, we do capacity building trainings where we then train them on, capacitate them on what is leadership, what are you expected to do as a leader. We also take them through mentorship sessions where we mentor them with women that have already walked the journey, who are in leadership already, so that they can at least learn some of the things. We also even work with duty bearers at local level. We also work with councillors so that they can at least mentor these aspiring women leaders who would then want to take up leadership positions. And on top of that, we also do social entrepreneurship training with them so that they can at least raise funds, so that they can also use these funds during their campaigning processes, because we realized that some of the reasons why women then fail to take up leadership positions is because the political system has been made to people have been made to believe that if you want to be voted for, you then have to give something to the people that are going to vote for you. But then for us, when we capacitate them in social entrepreneurship, it's not because we want them to then go and do vote buying. No, we capacitate them so that they can at least have funds to be from point A to point B during their campaigns, to at least develop their own flyers and all that. And from what my honorable has been also saying, we have also managed to then try to demystify the concept that the leadership positions are for men, to then capacitate them to know that even according to our own constitution, women have equal rights as men to take up leadership positions at all levels. So when we capacitate them, we then train them from the lowest level of leadership to take up leadership positions, even in school development committees, health center committees, so that at least stage by stage they then learn, so that when then they get into tough leadership positions that are said to be tough, like when you want to compete to be an MP, where you are now then facing men who are aggressive sometimes, who do name calling, so that they can then lower your confidence so that you cannot run. Then you are able to then say, I was capacitated to know that this is going to happen. So then I have to be resilient. I have to then fight back, not by the way that they are doing, but then by doing what is right, knowing what your community wants, engaging with your community, trying to solve problems that are in your community at local level using local solutions. Okay. Those are some of the things that we do.
Thank you very much, Patience. Now, obviously, the purpose of this discussion is for us to learn from the women's quota system and see if the processes, the systems in the past couple of years, and how we can adapt them to the youth system that's coming in, proportional representation. So, Isabel, what's your take on this matter, especially when we're saying women have been, you know, having to develop thick skin, having to stand headstrong after you're being told that you might be having a position that was handed to you. So do you think the youth coming in with these 10 seats might face the same challenges?
Of course, they are going to face the same challenges. And it's even worse because their numbers are so low. But I think it's better than nothing. We've always pushed for a youth quota, and it has always been falling on deaf ears, sorry. But now, at least we have those 10 seats. But it remains to be seen how these 10 youths will be able to perform there in Parliament. I'm actually happy with the way PR MPs have been performing, because they have not confined themselves to just female issues.
Okay.
They have gone on to tackle my issues, economy, they have tackled my issues, governance, and not necessarily just issues and go affect just women. Because there was this, myth, if you're a PR MP, it simply means because you are representing a constituency, then you are supposed to be, you are supposed to be pushing forward women's issues only. But I've seen women, performing rather well, even from budget consultations and whatnot. So I'm happy with that. With how they've managed to adapt to the situation in Parliament, and I'm sure even the youths will be able to do so. Okay. But we still need more numbers of the youth. So if we could have, as I said before, if we could have on the PR seats, which for the women, having a young woman, then an older woman, a young woman and an older woman, it would also reinforce the numbers, my youthful MPs in Parliament again. Mm-hmm. Because it's about time people shifted their mindset in terms of thinking of the youth as just my leaders of tomorrow. We are actually leaders of today, and we are leading right now. So it's giving us just 10 seats is just not enough. We haven't started yet, but at least we have taken the necessary steps in the right direction.
Okay. Tisinda, like what Isabel has highlighted, the importance of women not, after being in Parliament, you're not just going to be focusing on issues of women. I think that's a very important point. We can learn that it goes beyond being, a gender focal person. It goes beyond that. So how do you think, by ushering in this youth system, like she said, we have a small number, but of course we also have a number from the women's quota system. How do you think these young people can be effective in terms of, governance issues? Are they only going to be focusing on young people's issues, or they're going to be quite broader about it?
Okay, we need to understand that when one is an MP, you have been elected from a gender perspective, but it doesn't mean that you're only supposed to be focused on that. There are 3 roles of a parliamentarian. These include the representation role, the oversight role, and the legislative role. So the moment that you get in there and you think you're going to be focused on women's issues or youth issues, I think you've got a very great problem. What we need to understand is we need to then be able to remove that whole kakuna and say, this is where we are. We are there to be MPs, and there is no lesser MP, there is no greater MP. We are all the same. When it comes to even the benefits, when it comes to everything, we are all given the same. So that alone is something that I think we need to be able to demystify as well. We are having a great challenge whereby there are people who think maybe there are other greater MPs, then there are other lesser. That's not the issue. The issue is we are all MPs, and whatever each MP is able to do, any other can be able to do it. So for me, I think as young people, when they get into that parliament, they know they've been elected because it's an affirmative action program which has been put in place by our government. But what it then means is that it's a matter of us taking that program so that at least we are there to be put in parliament. But when we're in parliament, we need to act like parliamentarians. And this is, I think, what these young MPs are supposed to be doing when they come into parliament. They are just like any other ordinary MP. They are supposed to go and also to show that at least that it is effective. We need to understand that these quota systems or these, like for example, this one that we amended recently, it only has got 2 terms. And the idea was for us to be having a transitional phase whereby whenever you are then capacitated, when you are PR MP, then you can then be able to acquire a constituency. So this alone is enough for us to understand that at least this is a transitional program, which of course I would hope that it would actually be something which is perennial, and then we know that it will never be able to end. But at the end of the day, when they are there in parliament, they need to be effective. They need to be seen that at least they are able to do it. it. Because the moment that we show that we're able to do it, I'm sure then that means that each and every other person, we have the confidence to be able to occupy all these positions.
Thank you very much, ladies. We are going to take a short break. Do not go away. Welcome back to the second segment of our Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust discussion. And our topic is Beyond Constitutional Amendment Number 2 Act, Lessons Learned from the Women's Quota System. Now remember, this broadcast is brought to you by Zempapers Television Network and our partners, Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust. Now in our first segment, we were just getting into the initial explanation of the Women's Quota System, and my guests were giving us a very detailed analysis, what we are expecting from it. And of course, we're trying to understand the lessons we will learn from the Women's Quota System in adopting the Amendment Act, where we're saying we're now going to have 10 seats for young people. Now, moving forward, I'll start with you. How has the Women's Quota System, incorporated young women, and how is these 10 seats going to also complement on what the Women's Quota System is doing?
Okay, thank you. I think we certainly have a great challenge now. The challenge that we're having is everyone is talking about 10 seats, yet the seats are 20. Because the moment that now we are not going to be, we will continue saying 10, 10, 10. This is what is going to be out there. And then those other 10, zino shafwa, and then we won't be able to realize them. I feel that now the conversation that we need to be having as young people right now is we have got 20 seats. We have got 10 seats that are there on the PR, which then is going to be alternate. So what it means is we are so happy that this new dispensation has managed to afford young women an opportunity which is greater than even men. We have got 10 seats on the PR, on the 60 seats. And then we have got 5 seats which we know are guaranteed, which are going to be alternated, be it a male and a woman, just like that. So for us, I feel that this is how best we can then be able to do this. But then when we look about the fusion now, how best can we then be able to make sure that at least these young people would then be able to get into the women's quota? For me, I feel that what is very, very important on that is that we really need to be having capacity. If you look at what has been very much lacking was the issue of us not having capacity, especially the women's quota, on the women's quota MPs. If you look at it, the constituency MPs have got resources. So we really want to have capacity, be it in resources, because if you look at politics is a game of money, and you need to be having resources. So the moment that you don't have that, sometimes your chances of then occupying those positions are a bit less and limited. So for me, I think what is very, very important is that we need to be having resources. We need to make sure that at least we have had a lot of attacks when it comes to the issue of this women's quota. We have had people thinking that this quota is not relevant, it doesn't help, it doesn't satisfy the interests of the women, the young people. But for me, I'm saying at least we are there. When we look at this provision, I've always said it, that when we had this Constitutional Amendment number 2, we had only one option then. We didn't have two options of us coming up with the 50-50, because the issue was not about the 50-50. The issue was not to do with the 50-50. The issue was to do with the extension of the women's quota. And for me, when I look at it, also getting the women or the young women's issues, the youth issues coming into play, I think for us that was actually something positive. And also getting 30% of the local government quota. For us, I think that was actually something which was quite positive. So for me, when I look at this, I think what is very, very important now for young people is we're hoping that they will be able to get resources, because resources are very important. And also I'll be hoping that it's more on the structural issues, whereby we're saying, you know, it will seem as if some MPs are more superior than others, yet all of them are all MPs. So I think there is that need for, when it comes to the Electoral Reform Act, I think we need then to be able to do some electoral reforms which are towards making sure how do we then are able to make sure that at least we adjust this issue of this women's quota, and then we make sure that at least we institute the issue of the youth quota so that it becomes effective. I think that is very, very important going forward, because as it stands, if it is going to come in like that, we're going to have a great challenge whereby you will see that all of us will be waiting, all the women's MPs will then be waiting to say, okay, I'm just a signatory to the women, to the CDF, but I'm not the chair to it. We need to be having resources so that we can go back to the constituency and people will believe in us, because this is very, very important. Because the moment that I go there and the constituency MP has got something to go with, they've got that, they will come and say, we have built this school, or we've built this school, we've built these buildings because of the CDF. There I am as constituency as PRA MP, I have nothing to show. I think this is what is very, very important. The structural issues are important. We need resources. We need to make sure that at least when it comes to how we can then be able to be effective as PRA MPs, I think this will actually be able to also cascade down to also the youth MPs.
Okay. Isabel, from your political party's point of view and experience, how has this lack of resources and capacity affected service and performance of these MPs?
Like Tatenda has just said, it's so difficult for a PR MP to penetrate the community without any resources. Whilst you also have the MP who happens to, you know, be the constituency MP who has access to the CDF. So you can imagine, like what she said, Ndrukushika inini tatenda and nakana sent. I only have the few coupons which I get from Parliament, and I can't use those personal resources to then do in the constituency. But apart from that, there's also the real issue of a PR MP not being able to do any developmental work in a constituency which someone else already has, because then part of an attention that particular MP would think would a constituency. So you can't really work. I'm going to look for resources, maybe kuna donor or something, and I'll try and get a borehole in the constituency Adinogara, even though I'm not the constituency MP of that particular place. So if we could have maybe delimitation of responsibilities of my PR MPs and have them, this is their, space, this is what they're supposed to be doing, it would work around my issues. They do not encroach into my responsibilities constituency MP.
I think we can agree that resources and capacity, they are very important.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm also then assuming that, access to these resources and capacity, probably you have a greater advantage if you're affiliated to a political party. And we are talking about, like Patience highlighted earlier, how we want to incorporate young women that are not affiliated to any political party. And we are saying, okay, when we then do manage to get the resources for so-and-so who's not affiliated to a political party, how then do we also factor in the aspect of accountability? Because obviously you are representing the people, you are coming to the people, but in terms of accountability, how then can we say young women not affiliated to any political parties can deliver as much as we'd want them to? Patience.
Okay. I'll start by expressing what these other ladies have been saying by first putting out that the quota systems were put in place as a temporary measure, right? So I feel like, yes, we have extended it. Yes, it has its advantages, but it also has its major disadvantages as well, like what they have been explaining, right? These PRMPs do not have access to the CDF, right? So they cannot, monitoring them is then difficult to really monitor their work in the constituencies. How then do they go back into the constituencies and then try to be like accountable and all that, right? Because they will face criticism or they will be blocked out by the MPs that are directly elected in these constituencies. Then we then go back to the same issues that we're going to face again, even with the quota for the local government and even the youth quota, because these representatives will not have any constituencies, one, and monitoring their performances as well will be difficult, right? Rather than monitoring the performances of those that are already directly elected. Then we go back to the issue that you raised about those that are not even in the political parties that are also trying to benefit from these quotas. It's very difficult for them already. You can see that the system already has not put in place ways of how these are also going to then get the funding, the funds from the government to then go back again into the communities, right? So the system already selected these people. They are already out of the system. They cannot influence what they are not part of. You get it? So those that are elected who are in political parties have a better chance of getting some of the resources from their political parties. But then for these that are not even in political parties, they are not one considered from the selection of those that benefit from the quota system. Then how are we going to even think of them being selected to benefit from the funds when the funds are already limited and specifically set for political parties only?
Can I also come in there?
Sure thing.
Yes. It's rather unfortunate that Zimbabwe uses a political party system. So even if you decide to become an independent candidate, you cannot go to nomination court with a list with a list. Yekuti, these are the people of Andruda Otivazoite, my PRMPs. The constitution is very clear. It is to come from a political party.
Okay.
So already it's exclusionary because it becomes the sole responsibility of the political parties to bring in people who will then benefit from the quota systems. So if you're a young person or if you're a woman who really wants to benefit from this, there is no way around it. You just have to be a part of a political party for you to penetrate this space.
Okay.
Yeah, so then this brings also the issue of the electoral reforms that we're talking about, Monashe. This is very, very important. I think maybe we need then to be making sure that at least we make enough noise so that when we're talking about the Electoral Act, I think there is a need for us to look at those issues, especially the issue that we also talked about, that I think maybe we can then come up maybe with a provincial setup whereby we are saying I think it's important for us to then be able to select people and then they come from provinces, if ever that is that means we need now to be working on the constitution, amending it, and then also looking at the electoral reforms.
Definitely. We are running out of time, unfortunately, but just to run down and close up, my last question would be directed to all of you. You could start to tender, looking at this women's quota system and how we are going to try and advance with the young people coming in as well. How does this system increase influence, especially in the context of the parliamentary whipping system? Let's just be a bit brief on that one.
Okay, you always have to talk about it. Okay, thank you. The whipping system, I think we need to understand. I think we are over-exaggerating it.
Okay.
There is not a time that whenever I wake up each morning, I'm being told, Tatenda, go to parliament and say this. That's not it. But it's because people think maybe everything that parliamentarians are supposed to be doing is supposed to be, they need to be whipped. I'll tell you we had actually something different, whereby if you look at when we had the issue to do with teachers, it was across the whole board. Everyone, be it from ZANU-PF, be it from MDC, they were actually saying the same thing. If you heard it in Parliament, you can look at the handset. So what we're saying is that we are not told. There are some certain, I would say, okay, at certain times we are told to do that. But like what I said before, whipping has been there. It has always been there. Be it, we know we have adopted a British system when it comes to the Parliament. So every Parliament has got a whip. Why do they have whips if whipping is not important? So when we look at it, we need to understand that whipping has been there and it will always be there whenever we're in politics. That's what politics is all about. It's all about whipping each other. But however, when it comes to Parliament, it's not every day that we're whipped. We are whipped at certain times when we've got certain provisions that we really want to be moving. And also we understand that whenever we're in political parties, the whipping system has to come in place. So for parliamentarians that are going to be coming into place, I've said it before, if you don't want to get whipped, please don't come to Parliament. But if you really want to get whipped, then that's the day, because that's politics.
It really is an interesting one. Isabel, what's your take on the matter of whipping?
Okay, on the issue of the whipping system, I look at the whipping system and I just see party positions. A few years ago, Vincent Changrai, he's one of the youngest parliamentarians, had a position which was contrary to the party's position on sanctions. And he received a lot of flake when he made that position in Parliament. It goes back to the issue of whipping. So even though you are not expressly told what to say and what not to do, you are indirectly told what to say and what not to do. And the other thing is the whipping system is also evident in how a political party is then able to recall you if they feel that you are no longer representing it. So if you are whipped and you decide not to listen, it simply means they're not going to listen to the constituency which decided you were supposed to go there. They will just decide as a political party, could you no longer belong to us, so you have to leave. So every parliamentarian now has to listen to their political party, or else they stand to lose out.
Okay, just to close, Patience, as Tatenda and Isabel have highlighted, in your view, how does this whipping system, influence Parliament decisions and participation? Is it progressive? What's your take?
Okay, my take is the whipping system neutralizes the position of women in Parliament. Because if you are told what to say and what not to say, and if there are consequences of not listening to what you have been told, you have no option than to listen. Remember, you are there because you are representing a political party. You didn't go there as an independent member, but you are there because you are representing a political party. So the whipping system then neutralizes the agenda of women, right? Therefore, I then come back to the issue of us implementing our constitutional provisions that give 50% representation of women and men. If we then do that, it dilutes the whole whipping system, because if we have 105 women and 105 men, then we are guaranteed that whichever issue, if it's directly affecting women, we have a balanced number of women that are going to stand up for that position, right, from both political parties or independent candidates. Then it then neutralizes this whole you have to listen to what the party has said, and you are then going to be removed from a certain position because you did not listen. Then it takes us back to the whole patriarchal system, where as women we are there, yes, but then they are men who are deciding on our behalf on what we are going to say and what we are not going to say, because they are the majority in the political parties and they are the majority in the leadership positions. Therefore, whatever position that you're going to say, it has a direct influence of where you are coming from and who is leading you. So if women then take the lead, then women issues are then deliberated on a fair ground. That's what I can say.
Thank you very much. I think we can all agree that we need more time and more of these discussions. But unfortunately, that is all the time we had today. This brings us to the end of our program today. I would like to thank my guests, Honorable Tatenda Mavetera from ZANU-PF, Isabel Monzora Simango from MDCT, who's the National Secretary for Gender, and Patience Chidom Takaya from WALPI, who is the Training and Outreach Officer. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining me.
Thank you, Menashe. Thank you, Zimbabwe.
Remember, our topic of discussion today was Beyond Constitutional Amendment 2 Act, Political Parties' Perspective on the Youth Quota System. And remember, this program was brought to you by Zimpapers Television Network in partnership with the Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust. Have a good day.